Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. You're watching Just Law, coming to you live from our studios in Southwest London. I'm your host, Saleh Ahmed. We are discussing Islamophobia today. I have two guests who are going to assist me with the topic. I have Salman from Islam21c, and I have Shiplu Miah from MEND, which was before called I Engage. So if I can ask the viewers, if you experience Islamophobia or if you've taken action, if you call the police, do share your experiences with us, inshallah. As a community, I think we can do a lot more than what we're doing so far. If you consider the recent events that has taken place, Muslims are under scrutiny, Muslims are under the microscope, if you like. There's a lot of misrepresentation, a lot of things are being told about you and your religion, and I don't think many of us are actually, countering the negatives, the lies, the misrepresentations. And I think we owe it to ourselves, our community, our children, our future, to correct and, not allow the misrepresentation to sort of build. And you have multi-layered, Salman was saying earlier in Germany, Nazism didn't come overnight. It took a lot. So you vilify people, and then you start sort of saying bad things about them, until there is this brewing of hatred. And we can't let that happen as a community. I don't think our future generations will forgive us for sitting idle and letting these things build. Of course, our phone lines will be, you'll see the phone number. You can call in and participate. So if I can turn to Shiplu first. Does MEND sort of keep record of sort of whether the levels of Islamophobia has gone up or down, or?
What we do is we do monitor Islamophobia, in particular regards to the police data. And from the police data from the London Metropolitan Police is London-wide Islamophobic attack has gone up by almost 70%.
So this is year on year?
This is year on year. So I believe that this stat is valid until last October. So for that year, from October 2013 to October 2014, there's been a rise of almost 70% of Islamophobic
so that's almost
crimes.
Doubling, no?
Yeah, exactly. But some areas of London, it's not just double, it's quadrupled. In some areas, it's actually gone up by 500%. But that's based on the number of people who have actually reported it. Clearly, what evidence shows that it's probably higher than those figures, because that's just based on people who reported it. So a lot of people just...
So we have unreported
exactly.
versus reported.
Exactly.
If I may ask, how much of it would you say down to more people willing to report, and how much of it would you say is actual increase in Islamophobia?
How do you mean, as in?
Because sometimes, say for example, the police are more aware, there's more media campaign, more people report. It's not because it has increased per se, but more people are willing and they feel able to report.
Yeah, that's possible. That's possible that more people are now reporting. But either way, we know that most people don't report it. So it could be. Yes, we can say the increase is probably because some people are now reporting it than people before. But what the fact of the matter is, it's still happening, and it's substantial. And it's increasing. That's what matters, whether it's happening or not. Let's forget about how much it's increased by, but let's look at is it taking place and by how much. And definitely at the level it is now, it's totally unacceptable. It can be possibly argued that it's one of the highest form of crime. That is the fastest growing crime in London, certainly.
Okay. If I can ask both of you, what are the causes? If we can identify the causes, perhaps we can address and somehow counterbalance. Can we not do that?
I think, if I may, I think the cause of Islamophobia, historically, there could be certain aspects of it. Some can argue that Islamophobia has always been there since the beginning of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's prophethood and so forth. It can be argued, but if we were to focus specifically in Britain and over the last, over these decade or so, then we can identify 3 or 4 major contributing factors. One of them is the media itself. Second is some of the legislation that are in place that doesn't protect Muslim community as well as it does with other communities. For instance, the black community, the Jewish community, the Sikh community are very well protected under British law, but that doesn't, that's not the case when it comes to the Muslim community. And we can talk about why that is later, but those are two areas. Third one is just lack of our Muslims, activism and participation when it comes to media and politics. And one other thing is government policies themselves. When we have policies that effectively criminalizes aspects of Islam, then naturally the general public will see certain things belonging to Islam and Muslim to be extreme because the government policy is such that it defines it as extreme, and that can give rise to Islamophobia.
Okay, you said quite a few, I would say quite wide-reaching. Surely the government isn't inherently prejudicial towards Muslims because they have a duty to all communities.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that they are, but some of the policies are resulting in a growing a rise in Islamophobia.
And also, the government isn't this monolithic block. They have people advising them, pushing them one way or another. And many of the people who are advising government policy do have a specific ideologically driven hatred of Islam and Muslims. This is unavoidable. Normally, in normal circumstances, those people are ignored. But in circumstances that we might be seeing ourselves in, such as the expansion of the security services into our homes, into our schools, into our hospitals, and this climate of fear, it gives a voice. It gives a voice to those people who were normally on the fringes, but now are being consulted. Those people who ideologically have a somewhat apocalyptic worldview that they want to set up, this kind of a clash of civilizations thesis where you have Muslims and Islam attacking Western values and so forth. So these types of people, they do have an agenda, they have an ideology that wants them to see and provoke conflict between Muslims and between non-Muslims.
Okay.
And those
so
people,
what I understand from you, you're saying politicians, some of them have bias and perhaps they have, motives to present Muslims in bad light, whereby perhaps their foreign policy, perhaps their whatever it is they're trying to advance, by putting Muslims in bad light, they will achieve that.
Yeah.
And of course, the man on the street is thinking, well, the political elites are behind me on this, so I can do a bit more and get away with it because the sentiment is against the Muslim. So it's almost like a free shot, if you like.
Yeah. So within the government, there are obviously many people that are working towards cohesion and towards justice and fairness. But within the same kind of heterogeneous group, there are people with varying
we get the Muslim community accused of not doing enough to alienate, if you like, the radicals. What's your view on that one, Shiplu?
I think the media does give this impression, and certainly also the politicians, that we have this problem within the community of people becoming radicalized and extreme. But as I said, sometimes it's the policies themselves, the government policies around which the media operates, around which the general public operate, that forces people to see certain Muslims as extreme when they wouldn't have had those policies not been there. So it's
But would you not say it's both? We have some Muslims who are extreme.
That's
they fuel the politicians who are looking for that.
That's undeniable. Just as it's undeniable that there are certain right-wing extremists doing things like throwing bombs at mosques and so forth. And we've had that. The question is, why is it that when someone from the right-wing member legislature of EDO does something that is terrorist, almost like a terrorist activity, that they don't get the same focus from politicians and media in comparison to if had it been Muslim. And I think that focus that the media puts on, as well as the politicians, that gives rise to this whole Islamophobia, as well as this whole perception that Muslims have this problem within the community.
Yeah, if I say even the question, it's resting on elements of the foundation we touched upon earlier, and that is this a fairy tale thesis that somehow violent actions are caused by somebody's ideology, somebody's beliefs. this in and of
But
itself.
you don't surely don't expect the politicians to say because we invaded Iraq, because we invaded Afghanistan, they're
Of
doing
course.
this. I mean, if you're looking for an honest
some
politician, it's going to be
politicians are,
difficult to come by.
But there are some
So
politicians.
they will
are,
blame
and-
something else. They'll
yeah.
say, well, these guys were crazy from day one,
Of course,
and
yeah.
it has
But
nothing to do with
internally,
the
as
politics.
Muslims, within the Muslim community, we need to realize and recognize this very clever sleight of hand when they, instead of talking about national security in logical terms, they turn it into an issue of extremism. We should ask, what is extremism? Can you give an example of something extreme?
Okay, that brings us to the if you like, what can an organization do?
Yeah.
So MEND is doing something, Islam21c is doing something. What can other organizations, for example, mosques, community centers, what are they doing that they can do better, or what are they not doing that they could do? I mean, what would we want them to do to address this issue? Because I mean, I would say, Muslim community does feel sort of cornered from all sides. You say yes, it's a wrong answer. You say no, it's a wrong answer.
Yeah.
You say don't know, they say, well, you should know. I mean, where do we stand? What can we do? What can organizations do? And then I'll ask you, individuals, what can we do?
In terms of grassroots organizations, I think Shiplu hit the nail on the head when he said one of the main causative factors of the proliferation of Islamophobia is the inactivity of Muslims. We need to, as our mosques, as our Islamic societies, as Muslim organizations, businesses and so forth, we need to become more active and empower people who we represent.
And
to
are
be
there
able
organizations that
to-
can help us in this regard?
Of course, obviously, organizations like MEND, they do master classes, they teach organizations and general Muslim communities about.
Okay. So if I can turn to Shiplu now,
Yeah.
as an individual, what can we do? Say I don't know, I experience Islamophobia, say at work or at the train station,
Yeah.
whatever. What can we do?
I mean, there are various aspects of what we can do. With regards to police, then certainly if you are a victim of Islamophobic incident and crime, then you have to report it. You have to report it to police. If it's a very serious and urgent, then you call 999. If not, it's the non-emergency number of 101. Get it reported, get it registered as Islamophobic hate crime, and what that will do is, even if we don't see immediate benefit of reporting, then the future generation, at least it will benefit, because we will know the troubled areas within Britain where we can ask the police to ensure that there's extra resources deployed there to root out Islamophobia.
Okay.
That's something that we can do. With regards to the media, for instance, then there's two things we need to look out for, and they translate into clauses of when it comes to newspaper regulatory body, and that is Clause 1 effectively, which is, are news items, are they accurate or are they misleading? If they're misleading or if they're completely false, then that's something that we should complain about and try to get it resolved. Second thing is, are Muslims being mentioned within the story, and is Islam being mentioned within the story, which isn't relevant to the story, which isn't central to the story? If it's not central or relative to the story, then a person's faith, sexuality and so forth should not be mentioned. And so if it is mentioned and it has nothing to do with the story, then we have to ask, why was it mentioned? And they shouldn't have mentioned. Those are things that an individual can do, is to just pay attention to the news. Is it misleading, and are Muslims' faith or religion being mentioned when it shouldn't have been mentioned? That's something that we can look into.
Where do we complain to?
You would complain to, now it's known as IPSO. You contact them, which governs the press media. If it's broadcast media, then you contact Ofcom.
Okay. All right, viewers, we've been talking about Islamophobia. It's a very vast topic. There's a lot to be said, but I think we can summarize with three things. One is learn what it is, stay focused, stay aware, and if it does happen, please do report it. We have organizations that can help, provide guidance, etc. I think iEngage produced a booklet in doing so. We haven't got very much time, so I need to thank Salman from Islam21c for coming in and sharing his ideas and thoughts. Thank you very much for coming. Shiplu, Miah, thank you very much for coming, and I think I commend you both for engaging with the community and bringing this sort of, because this hatred, this crime has to stop, and Muslims have to sort of stand up, because if you don't, you will feel sort of squeezed, and perhaps the weaker Muslims will suffer. Viewers, we were talking about Islamophobia. What I would say is, of course, if you're watching the show, 101 was the non-emergency number, 999 if you obviously fear for yourself and you need to call the police. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much for watching. Inshallah, I'll see you next week. So until then, you take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.